Hello folks, welcome to another day at the ranch, or in this case to be more precise, part 2 of our Grey Goose revival series, which will hopefully this will be the final episode. It's been something of a saga. I can't believe it's been nearly 6 months now since the gearbox failure. So before we get into the details on what we've got going on with the car now, I just wanted to address some of the comments from some of the last videos. And as well, wanted to say big thank you to everyone that responded to my last little kind of just clip video there asking about the placement of the 6-speed gearbox. Well, we'll get into that shortly. But let's just address a couple of the comments that had turned up on the last videos. Alright, so first up, the internet was extremely concerned about me using axle stands on, you know, kind of stony ground, like not concrete or tarmac. And I'm not doing that. As you can see, all of our stands, both primary and secondary, are on large concrete paving slabs, and they've all been well bedded down to ensure that we don't have any unpleasant accidents. So you'll see here as well that not only do I have a main stand that has the weight of the car on it, but there's a backup set here ready to jump in if we have a problem. Because one thing I don't intend to do is to get splatted by one of my own vehicles. So thank you for your concern, internet. It is appreciated, but we do have this, at least this part in hand, is even a backup stand sitting under the tow bar here at the back. Next comment concerned my crappy petrol gearbox, and as some people spotted, the coupler had indeed failed, and then I got a brace of comments and people telling me the gearbox was fine, but it was the coupler that failed. Well, yes, the coupler failed, but the gearbox also failed. There's a problem in this. Doesn't matter what gear you put it in, it just kind of clunks around a bit, but it does not transmit drive. So this gearbox is dead, as well as its coupler friend. Alrighty folks, so we're in the workshop here, and apologies for the lighting. You know, as you know, it's still just boxes and stuff strewing all over the floor. But one of the things I wanted to address that had been brought up again in the last video was the issue of couplers and alignment of couplers on motors and longevity. This motor here, some of you may remember it, is our 13-inch DC X forklift motor. We originally had in the E39, and it covered over 100,000 miles in that vehicle. This coupler here, one that I made myself quite a few years ago, on actually this very lathe, and I will link at least one of the videos in the description of the making of that coupler and adapter plate for those of you that may be interested. The reason that I bring this up is just because you don't need the level of accuracy that some people believe you do when it comes to lining up adapter plates, couplers, motors, all that kind of thing. This is 100,000 miles here. There was never a shake, a rattle, or a roll out of it. The reason that motor came out was twofold. The first was I wanted to upgrade the yacht to AC, and the second was that the original brushes had just about started to bottom out in there, and I was kind of keen to upgrade, but that motor is still perfectly functional. The coupler still perfectly functional as well. Alright, so let's have a look at our gearboxes here. So on the left, we have our petrol Getrag box, on the right our diesel ZF box. Now, one of the things I said in the last video was that we could theoretically have just bolted the diesel gearbox up, made a new coupler, because the bell housing bolt patterns are the same. Now, the challenge that we have though, and you might be able to see it a little easier here with the two of them in this way, is that the angle on the petrol engines lean over this way at much more of an angle than their diesel counterparts. So the first thing that we had to do before we could tackle any of the other problems was to work out a method of determining the difference in the angles between the two gearboxes. So what I came up with is what you see here. What I did was I set the two gearboxes up here so that they're perfectly vertical. The bell housings on both of them were perfectly vertical. And then I picked where the gear lever connects. So in this case, it connects to these points here. Sorry, it connects to these points here. And on the petrol, it connects here. So then we get our spirit level. We basically level our gearboxes so that they're in that, so that this part of them is in a horizontal position, as they would be when they're in the vehicle, parked on perfectly level surface. So what I did then, as I came along, and put the adapter plate on the petrol gearbox, put a spirit level straight up so we get a plumb line, marked a line on it, transferred over, and did the same on the diesel. And what we have here then, come here, all right. So we have then our two lines of our diesel line, which is currently vertical here because we're on the diesel gearbox. We've our petrol line, which has got a slant on it, and the difference between these here is the amount of rotation that we've to put on our plate so that we can position the mounting holes for the Nissan Leaf motor. Because say for example here, this is one of the holes that would have been in the right place for the petrol gearbox, and this center dot here is where it needs to be for the diesel one. So how I located those, so we made a template. Made our template basically as such with our adapter plate on the petrol gearbox, and basically this would have been vertical then, so we centered this up and marked a vertical line, then transferred to our diesel gearbox and then lined up with our diesel slant, and that gives us our locations where we can center dot the holes. So with our holes, so not only does this give me the location for the holes, as I mentioned earlier, it also let me find that I did indeed have a misalignment on my motor shaft and my gearbox input shaft on the petrol setup. So we've been able to correct that. It's actually, you can't really see it too well, but it worked out. It's been about 2 millimeters out from the center point here. So we have that corrected now, thanks to our template and our kind of methodology here for working out the slant. Now, the challenge then is, as I say, because I found it almost impossible to get an engineering shop to do any of this work for me. And as you know, my own workshop is in a state of flux here. So what I have managed to do is rigged up an extension lead to my drill press. I had to go and buy a grease gun this morning because my drill press decided that this would be the most opportune time for the motor to need grease. As you can see, it's got greased bearings on there, so we had to grease that up. But the good news is then we can get our little controller here. Beautiful. Let's cut that part out. Really? I guess I didn't work the grease in enough. Oh, seriously right now. See folks, this is what happens when I go on camera. I'm hoping the guys that moved this for me didn't do something stupid and damage it. Because that's always the challenge when you're moving heavy machinery. People that machinery doesn't belong to tend not really to give a toss. Come on. No, that's not gonna go. All right, brilliant. So I have a bigger problem to deal with. So anyway, we'll deal with the drill press, and then theoretically should be able to drill that plate. So good news is, just had to get more grease in there, I think. So I'm going to leave that run for a couple of minutes, just to let it work the grease in. And fingers crossed there's no damage or something bent in here. So anyway, yeah. Going to be able to drill our adapter plate here. Anyway, so right, I'm gonna get to this. We'll come back when we're drilling the plate. Well, folks, little interlude. Got my old Master Volt. There goes Steve McQueen. Got my old Master Volt solar inverter just plugged in here. It's such a fine day. I just couldn't not capture a bit of the sun. So I got 3 panels. These are what are they? I think they're 300 watt. They're like 280 or 300 watt panels. I think they're like 40 volts each or something like that. I'll have a look at one of them. I think they are anyway, but I've been collecting panels, and ultimately, you know, in a few weeks I'm going to be putting a ground mount system up here in the field. But just for today, I just said I'd stick them on here and get a bit of free energy. So we've been running the house pretty much all day with these. It's actually exporting power, so I decided to put on a wash just to use some of the power. So this is my, these will be, I got 9 of these panels, so we'll be putting those up on a ground mount, as I said, up around here. But there's something else I wanted to show you on the whole solar front. Check out these things. So we've got 2 of these, and over here I've got the grass and the buttercups taking care of something like 40 of these evacuated tubes. So we got ourselves a solar thermal system. Now what happened there one day to be scrolling around a second-hand website, and these were these frames and the tubes over there, and over here there's some more bits and bobs. What have I got here? I've got these pumps, and there's some kind of a what's the name of that thing? An expansion vessel. So got pumps, expansion vessel, copper tubing, all this stuff, and there's a controller in the shed there somewhere. But anyway, basically these were free. The guy was giving these away, and unfortunately he was up at the north side of Dublin and I'm in Cork. So long story short, I took my wife's Nissan Leaf on a 400-mile 15-hour odyssey. We basically got ourselves a solar thermal system. Now these things are pretty crazy. I'd no idea, like I'd only got vague idea about how these things worked. But there yesterday, it was a really dull day. It was rain, and I just pulled out one of these and just stood it up against the truck here. It was in shade. As I said, it was a dull day, but that bulb thing on that heat collector thing on the top of it, that thing is, I could not keep my hand on that. So yeah, we got some solar thermal, so we're going to be doing solar thermal, probably do that on the flat roof of the back kitchen. And we'll put solar PV, as I said, up on a ground mount here. So that's just a little solar interlude for you folks. But we are getting there. And the this thing is definitely humming away. Alright, so little, I guess, I don't know, house update interlude, shed interlude. I got a hydraulic power pack. Pretty cool. So let's have a look at the shed. Let's have a look at this thing. Alright? What is that thing? Well, that thing was the bane of my life. Because in here, you may remember this shed here. I called this the skip shed because it was full of crap. It was full of all the rubbish that I took out of the house. So it took two big skips, which would be dumpsters for our American viewers, to clear this thing out. Then I had to get the roof off it. And once I got the roof off it, I found that in the corner here, there was a big ass tree that had taken root. You can see some of the roots and some of the bits I had to cut off. And had grown all the way up there into my workshop. So I had to demolish part of the stone wall so I could actually get at the thing. But could only do that once I had this shed cleared out and had the old roof off. Did manage to save some of the galvanized sheets which are down there. So anyway, this is more of the roofing timber. That'll be combusted come winter. So anyway, long story short, this thing, I basically dragged that thing out of there with the truck. Now, I don't know what you call this, a tree. It's not a tree, it's not a wall, it's not a sheet of galvanized, but it's the frame of a tree. It absorbed rock. It absorbed a lot of rock. It absorbed two sheets of that corrugated galvanized steel. I got one of them out. One of them is never coming out. It absorbed cable. See, that's literally absorbed the cable. It absorbed plastic bags. And it absorbed this cloth, whatever this weird cloth is. Now, the closest thing, in my experience to this, is from the John Carpenter film by the same name, The Thing. So this is The Thing. So I had a thing that was trying to, I guess, take over the shed. So fortunately, with the application of brute force and one Mitsubishi L200 truck, we got it out of there. So little shed interlude. So I have to do some building work here and get this repaired and get some more galvanized sheeting in here to close off that side of the workshop. So, okay, interlude for shed, not quite house, but dum dum, dum dum, dum dum. Yeah, the thing. Okay, so this is going to be drill press take 2. Oh, if I don't trip over, up it. Obviously with this helpful beam here sitting in the middle of it. So anyway, as you saw earlier, my drill press was not happy. I thought the problem was down to the motor being tight or the belt being tight or something gotten maybe, I don't know, bent out of shape or damaged or something. But anyway, problem turned out to be my little capacitor box here, which I've had for about 20 years for running the 3-phase motor on the drill. Decided that today would be the most appropriate time for it to let go. So I decided against mucking around trying to fix that. You know, I don't know where I'd have parts anyway. This is a mess. So I had this is a 1 horsepower inverter drive, and I'd gotten this. I got that as part payment for a job. I think what now? Probably 4 or 5 years ago. And I had only ever turned the thing on to just to test it. So I'd planned to use it on the drill and planned to use it on the lathe just with a, just a plug. Because ultimately this whole place is going to be running on an inverter off grid. So I really don't want to be, using direct online starting big induction motor. That's a 550 watt, I think it's a 3/4 horsepower induction motor. So I didn't really want to be direct online starting that with, something like this. So I wanted to use an inverter drive anyway. So when this turned up, it was kind of ideal, but it's been sitting on a shelf. I haven't used it. So today, anyway, I just turned it on. I've no idea. These things always have a billion parameters in them. But I think if I take hand and if I go on, start, go start, probably won't do. Oh, here we go. Okay, yeah, now I have to hold down this button here to ramp up the frequency. But you can probably hear the drill starting to move. There we go, 50 hertz. There's our drill, ready for drilling. And I have to say it sounds an awful lot smoother than when it was just running on a capacitor box. So this is how I'm going to be drilling, and I guess with the solar out there, we're drilling with sunshine. So I got to rig up some kind of way ultimately to have a start-stop button, but just for today, so we can drill the plate, we'll be able to do that. So when you press stop, it takes interminably long time for it to ramp the frequency down, which is something I don't particularly like, because if something goes wrong with a drill, you want it to kind of stop pretty quick. But anyway, just for drilling whatever it is, half a dozen holes in that plate, this will do the trick for us. Alright, so welcome to the underside of the Goose, and we see our Gen 1 Nissan Leaf motor here. Also welcome to some of my terrible undercar videoing, so apologies for that in advance. If you're nauseous, you should either go for some anti-nausea meds or cancel this video, go up to the search bar and type in funny cats and press enter, and you will be taken away from this. So in the meantime, Here is our 6-speed gearbox it's currently in. You will see rather deliberate 50mm hole drilled here in the bell housing, and we will take advantage of that now, and we will get in here, show you our very nice and very sexy motor coupler, and I will be able to show you some of this, hopefully be able to show you, this phone just wants to keep annoying me, be able to show you some of this running very soon, and it is running absolutely bang on in there. This is the second coupler that I had made. This was part of the delays. I had a local company do my first coupler, put it in here into our gearbox, everything seemed fine, and as soon as I spun the motor, it nearly shook the car to pieces. There was that much run out in it. Those guys basically just didn't know what they were doing. So I ended up having to get another clutch disc and another leaf motor coupler, and sent them up to a guy near my old house that used to do my drive shafts and stuff for me, and he made this coupler, which, as you can see even by the look of it, is definitely a work of art, and it works even better than it looks, and it was even cheaper to get this made than the other guys here did. So that solved 99% of our driveline vibration issues. Now, some of you may recall from the last episode, I was struggling here because, let me see if I can shuffle myself back a bit without, I was struggling here because I couldn't get the gearbox into a position. This is our 6-speed 320D ZF gearbox, and I couldn't get it to, basically I couldn't get it to fit the car, okay? And the problem was really here, because in the chassis of the car we've got these kind of built-in threaded inserts, and I rather foolishly assumed that, well, you know, this is an E46 Touring, and they did get these 6-speed gearboxes in them with the I think it was the N47 diesel engine, the 4-cylinder diesel. So we should have, you know, a set of these holes, and they're back here somewhere, that this cross member from the diesel version should basically just bolt up on. And the bad news is they did not. This cross member was 40mm further to the back of the car than any of the holes would align up to. So what I had to do was I had to drill and riv nut the chassis rails on both sides so that I had a place to bolt up the cross member. We then get in there. We then shortened our shortened our gear shifter linkage by 40mm and our gear shifter bracket by 40mm. And that let us get, basically we can now shift gears fine. Everything spins up fine here, our output flange, the whole lot. I'll show you all that in a few clips. And as you can see here, the last kind of missing link in our drivetrain is to get our drive from that output flange on our gearbox down to our differential there. So that is what our prop shaft is for. So obviously the The 320D prop shaft that I bought, thinking it would just go in here, obviously would not, because this whole thing is now 40 millimeters further to the rear of the vehicle. So that drive shaft is off with a drive shaft company now being shortened by 40 millimeters on the front section, and I'll hopefully get that back tomorrow, and we should be able to get it in here and get drive going to our vehicle. Now, the best explanation that I had as to why there wasn't holes here that would just match up was that this car, although it's a what is it, 2004 reg, it is actually a 2003 vehicle, and they didn't start fitting the N47 engines and 6-speed gearboxes to these until the 2004 model year. So my guessing is that as part of that, the 2004 model year, there would have been then locations here, and or they made some other changes that basically, I don't know, maybe ended up moving the engine position forward in that model year. But whatever the reasons are, anyway, we didn't have that choice, because as you can hopefully see, we've got a big battery box there in front of our Leaf motor. So that's what we got here, folks, at the minute. So our gearbox is all in. We're happy as clams here. We got no driveline vibration. I had a horrible one, but of course, idiot features here had basically left one bolt in one of the prop shaft areas here, and it was just whipping around here and was just shaking the tail of the gearbox terribly. I thought there was something majorly wrong, but I was setting up the camera all around it and filming, and I said, well, I'll come down and I'll film this bit. And of course, as soon as I crawl in here, I see there's a stupid bolt sitting in here. So I was like, oh, for Pete's sake. So once I got that out of there, all the vibration went away. So we're basically we're running very nicely here, and I'll give you a spin with this here now, just so you can see it. I got the rev limiter put up to 9,000 RPM there, just to make sure that there's nothing stupid. So yeah, we finally got our 6-speed in. And one thing I'll just address here, because I know it's going to come up as well, is that, so normally when I'm lining up these gearboxes on the adapter plate, I do them stacked vertically. So I got this whole thing vertical. The gearbox sits on top of the adapter plate, and I spin the motor until we get the gearbox in a position that there's no vibration and run out and that kind of thing. And that served me very, very well with any of these that I've done. Now, in the case of this vehicle here, obviously that's not an option for me, just because the motor and the plate are still in the vehicle. So what I ended up doing was basically supporting the motor and the gearbox with their own jacks. So I had two, got a bottle jack here and another one under the motor. I just basically adjusted them until we got this guy running perfectly straight in there, without any shaking or shudderings in there. And then we just torqued up our bolts and we are good to go. So that's it, folks. That's kind of where we're at. We're just waiting on that drive shaft now. We should be picking that up tomorrow, and with a bit of luck then the Goose will be back in operation. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to crawl out, fire up the car, and we will spin things up here so you can see what happens. Now I'm going to take my microphone, I'll clip it, you can see it right on there, so you'll be hopefully getting all the sounds that you like, all the sounds we know and love. Okay folks, hope you've enjoyed that part. I'm going to go ahead and do some housekeeping tasks on the car, like putting the strengthener plate back in under the engine and tying up some of that cabling that you saw hanging around down there. And with a bit of luck, tomorrow we'll have ourselves a drive shaft. I won't bother filming putting that in, it's paint by number stuff. But I certainly will film us getting the Goose back down on the wheels and hopefully going for a little bit of a drive. So fingers crossed, stay with us. Okay folks, as you can probably see, got ourselves a drive shaft. Got my drive shaft back from the workshop guys this morning. I just stuck it back in the car, put my new centre bearing on, and it's a perfect fit. So we're all bolted up here, and I'm going to torch around for you. We're bolted up here. They took the extra 40mm off this part here and welded the universal joint back in, balanced it all up for me, so fingers crossed all that's going to run fine. So I'm going to go ahead now and get all this matting and tools out from under the car, and yeah, then we'll see about getting her back down on her feet for the first time in, I don't know, 5 months, something like that. So yeah, I think it was February when the Gearbox coupler scenario failed on me and ended up coming back here on a tow truck. So yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting. I know it probably seems boring to most people, but yeah, I'm quite excited about this. So right, I'm gonna clear out the matting, tools, all that, jack the car up, get the stands out, get her back down, and we'll come back when we're gonna hopefully drive out of this, not quite the grave, but I guess drive out of where she's been now for quite some time. Alrighty folks, got her back on the ground, got her switched on, so I got the key here, gonna jump in and see what happens. Wish me luck. Well folks, there you have it. And not exactly very flattering first drive out of the Goose with her new 6-speed gearbox and drivetrain in there. So we're back. The Goose is back in town. So watch out anything that needs to get moved. There are some things we need to get moved. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Goose for a test drive. We'll go to the car wash. I might go to a fast charger and see if our CCS and everything else is still working as it should. No reason it shouldn't, but you know, been sitting there 5 months, so it'll pay to find out. So stay with us. Well folks, as we can see, the Goose is back in town. I splurged, took her to the car wash, $10. Figured after hibernating for at least half the winter that she deserved a bit of a clean up. And yeah, looking pretty good. And driving, hell of a lot better. So, just back from a bit of a test spin. Went into my, well, I guess local fast charger, which in this case is, stand by, drum roll, 34.1 mile round trip for me. So we were able to CCS without any problems. And of course we now have our nice 6-speed gear shifter fitted. So folks, I know this one's been a bit spread out, and I got a lot of screw ups in here, which is pretty much par for the course when I get working on something that I haven't done before particularly, and even sometimes things that, well, I have done before and just screw them up again, which is not very smart. But drivability in the car is, I would have to say, a lot better with this gearbox. It's probably just the ratio mix up between the diesel gearbox and having a petrol diff. It just works out really nice. I could nearly just drive around in 3rd gear for most of the time. But I get to use a lot more of the gears too with this, I find, whatever the ratio mix is. So one of the reasons that I wanted to get the Goose back on the road quickly is I've a lot of kind of hauling to do for the house renovation, and this car is ideal for it. But as well as that, I'm going to be taking about a 500 kilometer road trip in a few days to basically strip out the bits I want from I think it's a 2006 Lexus GS450H. So we'll be getting the gearbox, inverter, loom, all that good stuff. Getting it for a very good price, but the only caveat is that I have to take all the bits out myself. So I'm going to be loading up the Goose with tools, and we're going to be hitting the fast chargers hard. The Goose having CCS is quite handy because there's a lot more CCS options and a lot more multiple CCS fast chargers available to me on the motorway system here. I mean, I can use some of the Ionity stations where it can be 6 or even 8 fast chargers available, so I don't need to worry about some guy sitting there with a Model 3 for 2.5 hours filling up. But anyway, we're going to be getting that GS450 system set up here, first of all as a test bench, so we can test it out with the Zombieverter VCU. There's been a few folks now looking on the forum to be having some problems with this, and it's kind of really hard to try to fault find that when I don't have a system here. So now that we have the Goose back on the road, job number one is going to be to head up to Dublin and pick up this strip out these bits from this GS450H. And I'm also having a look, I might be able to get myself some bits out of a Gen 3 Prius as well. So another little project idea that's been rattling around in the back of my head, but more on that later. So anyway, folks, good news is Goose is back in town. And we will, you'll be seeing this car quite a bit now as it's kind of working again. So on that trip, I might just film some of that. I might film some of the trip. I might film some of the work on the Lexus. If you guys think that'd be worthwhile, leave me a comment below and I will do so. So yeah, that's about it for this video. We'll come back, I'll say fairly soon now with our GS450 system, and we've got another update video for you then. I'll probably do another update video on the VCU because I've got some more features being added to the VCU. Or I should say, I guess the hardware is there, it's just, you know, the software is finally coming together for them. So I'll leave it there for this. As always, folks, don't forget to give a dislike. Do not share this crap with your friends or they will not be your friends anymore. And for pity's sake, don't subscribe. Do, however, check the links in the description for Open Inverter Forum, GitHub, Patreon, PayPal, but don't support me on any of those things because then I'll have money and I'll just do more of this kind of thing. And again, nobody wants that. So I will leave you with a thought, and that thought will be happy Grey Goose repairing.